So the first step there, obviously from an engineer's lens, because that's how I started. And I saw a very difficult problem to solve because the ocean is complex and we are trying to protect assets in the ocean, big assets. Big steel ships being around everywhere in the world. So the challenge we stood in front of there with regards to trying to develop technologies that keeps the ship clean was quite a massive challenge.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 227. Suppose you are a loyal listener of the Shipping Podcast. In that case, you know that I've been doing a deep dive into hull performance and antifouling, and that I attended the International Antifouling Conference earlier this year. Well, one thing leads to another, and in this episode, I'm conversing with Alexander Enström, the Executive Vice President of Marine at Hempel. Hempel is a global coating supplier. So here we get into the details of the hull. This is Alexander Enström for you.
Every conversation matters.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
So hi everyone, my name is Alexander Enström. I'm a Swedish national. I'm a father of four, and I'm also the head of the marine business here at Hempel.
And what is your background?
So I'm a chemical engineer, and if you go a little bit further back, so I grew up with a father who is a painter, actually still climbing around scaffolding and painting wooden houses in Sweden. I picked a route to become a chemist, and since then I also have been in the paint industry because that's what we do here at Hempel as well.
So you were educated as a chemical engineer, and how did you start your career?
I think like many, it's a bit of a random journey. I used to remember towards year 5 there on my master thesis or in Uppsala University, I was sitting in the canteen and there was this journal there where I saw an ad for a job. So it was a coatings company who was looking for a chemist, and I thought, being hungry to get into the working environment, adding 1 + 1, being a chemist now or soon at least, and also having that background of having painting houses myself. So that seemed like a low-hanging fruit. And luckily I was successful with that application. And that's how I ended up in the coatings industry.
Okay. So you call it the coating industry. And how did you get into the shipping industry? Or was that a coating industry for ships? Or?
Yeah, it was actually. So again, a little bit on that random journey. So I went for an interview with the company and being there. So, coatings protects a lot of different kind of assets, being houses or bridges or airports or basically everything you see around in the world. But being there in the interview round, we were also shown around in the R&D department. And I just remember this part of the R&D section that was related to marine coatings. And in particular, they started to explain to me how coating matters for ships as well. And the one thing that really caught my attention is how important coatings are for the efficiency of a ship, because you really need to make sure that, as an example, the hull stays clean in order to make it efficient throughout its life cycle, basically. So from the bottom, you could say, or from the hull side, I became an antifouling chemist, which is antifouling is the technology you use to protect the hulls of the ships. And so that was my entrance into the shipping industry as well, from the hull side.
And how did you find it? What did you see when you entered the shipping industry?
So the first step there, obviously, from an engineer's lens, because that's how I started. And I saw a very difficult problem to solve because the ocean is complex and we are trying to protect assets in the ocean, big assets. Big steel ships being around everywhere in the world. So the challenge we stood in front of there with regards to trying to develop technologies that keeps the ship clean was quite a massive challenge. And also when I entered, there had been some very important regulations in our space, meaning that certain technologies was not allowed anymore for the right reasons. But it also meant a big challenge for us as engineers. How do we make sure that we then solve this problem again with new, more sustainable technology. So I saw a big challenge, and to put a bit of numbers to it at the time, and to some extent still today, a ship over a typical dry docking cycle will lose 15 to 20% efficiency because you get algae and slime on the underwater hull. So that problem was a big and exciting challenge to try to overcome. That was my first observation entering the industry.
What was the second one?
Well, the second one was that then I realized there are good products out there, but why are they not adopted? Why is technology not adopted at fast pace? And I moved into more and more commercial roles, and in the end, ending up where I sit today, leading this commercial business unit at Hempel. Second problem I discovered was the complexity of the shipping industry as well. And when I mean complexity, when we talk about the ecosystem of stakeholders, ship owners, technical managers, and operators, I realized that there was a big gap between these stakeholders to basically drive adoption of good technology. There was an issue with incentives. So the technical manager who was responsible for maintaining the ship from a given budget from the ship owner might not see the benefit that technology gave to the operator who in the end, in this case, paid for fuel and suffered from the penalty. So that was my second big observation, but more from a commercial lens into the industry.
Interesting. So how long have you been with Hempel now?
So I've been with Hempel for 3 years. I started here at the beginning of 2021. And maybe I should say some more words about Hempel. Would that make sense as well?
Yes, please.
So Hempel, we are a company that was established in 1915. And the first part, so it's a history with a long track record. And it grew up from basically serving the shipping industry as well with coatings. And so today, from a wider perspective, we are developing and manufacturing coating solutions for many different kinds of industries that I alluded to earlier. One thing is actually for households, so decorative paints, as we call them. So we have a brand that is, or many brands that are used by consumers. Another segment for us is energy, so renewable energy, wind sector as an example, infrastructure, bridges, airports, and then not the least the marine sector, the marine segment as well that I lead. And what we do is basically trying to solve a few but big problems for the industry, which is protecting the assets. One thing from corrosion, so there's paint on all areas of the ship, so we need to make sure that steel doesn't corrode. And secondly, what I alluded to earlier about keeping the ships efficient and keeping the hulls clean.
And then maybe keeping the ocean clean in a way, or?
Absolutely. So when we work with innovation, we have very much two drivers if we talk about that problem of hull performance or keeping the hulls clean and the ocean clean. It is to make sure that ships are efficient and thereby reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also keeping the ocean clean. And we want to make sure that we minimize the impact of the ocean life as well. And if you allow me to tell a little bit of story there from an engineer's lens as well. So earlier, with early technologies, you typically played a lot with the chemistry and active ingredients to make sure that you keep the hull clean. One thing that really impressed me at the company here was when I joined as well, they have looked beyond how to solve this problem and also trying to solve it with physical properties. And let me explain a bit more around that. But it basically means that we are having now trying to bind the water to the ship as well, or a small layer of water by having the physical properties of the film that makes water attractive to the hull. So in a way, we are actually trying to play a bit of hide and seek with the organisms in the water, basically not trying to hide the big ships there by having water attracted to it, because then organisms that want to settle basically don't recognize that there is a solid object there. So to your point about also making sure that how we design solutions have minimal impact also on the water, trying to come up with new ways of solving the problem is very important.
But you have been around for a while now. So what developments have you seen in the industry?
To begin with, I've seen a big change in the recognition of technology to support the industry to decarbonize. What I alluded to earlier, one of the first things we saw was that the hunger for new technology innovation was primarily driven by owner-operators, where, again, the incentives of different technology adoptions was inside that individual company. But lately, what I really have seen also, and I would say very much supported by initiatives from IMO, EEXI and CII and so on, that the drive for decarbonization now goes beyond fuel saving. It's actually a commitment from the industry. And therefore, the interest in technology from other stakeholders that weren't first movers is really there. And that's, I see, as a very positive evolution and development. And from our space as a technology provider as well, it's very encouraging to see that adoption of good technology is accelerating.
Mm. So how do you see the future? Where are we going?
I am quite optimistic. I mean, I said in my introduction as well, I'm a father of four, so we have no choice than to create a more sustainable planet to begin with. When I see the industry from our lens as well, we do observe, of course, the focus on green fuel and new alternative ways to propel the ships. And I think that's an extremely important move to make sure that there are alternatives to the heavy fuel oil used today. But also from our lens, we really see the opportunity to focus on efficiency of existing world fleet. So as I said before, an average ship today still loses 15 to 20% efficiency because the hull is not performing. There is a big opportunity for the industry with relatively simple retrofits and low-hanging fruits to improve, for instance, already much shorter term before you have established infrastructure supply of new fuels, but also really focusing on existing world fleet and the efficiency of that. So I see big, short, low-hanging fruits for decarbonization, and it makes me quite positive also for the long run where all the other elements of decarbonization will come into play at scale.
I think it's important what you bring up here. So many people are talking about the new deliveries or what's happening from that point forward, but still there are 80,000 ships sailing right now.
There is, and we know they can be improved. That's the thing. So, but we just need even more collaboration, transparency to prove that and validate that, so that the threshold to adoption comes lower. I believe that there's ways to accelerate also for the existing work.
But we are like the hidden industry. Not many people know about us. And the people who are in the industry, we are so passionate and we really want to move things forward. How do we reach outside our own bubble? Do you have any good ideas?
I think we need to be more vocal about what we are actually doing. I agree with you. I didn't know about the industry before I got into it. And when you're inside, you fall in love with it because it's global, but it's still relatively small and you get to know all the people all around the world. So that's one thing that I really enjoy about the industry. But it's also an industry that are solving real and important problems. It's an industry that now going to need a lot of diverse talents coming in because the problems we are solving are becoming more and more complex. So I think we need to tell the story of what shipping really is. It's the backbone of world supply, and it is an industry that is exciting and entangled in all other industries in one way or another. And there are some very nice momentum around decarbonization and sustainability that should be attractive for all kinds of young talent that we need to help solving those problems.
Because we have a tendency, I mean, in the old days, there were recruitment from the sea, from people who were sailing, coming ashore, and then developing the industry. But I think now we are also recruiting people from other kinds of industries or young people with other knowledge or interest. I'm thinking about the digitalization, for instance. A lot of things that hasn't been in our industry before, where we need some more knowledge and more people to explain to us what it's all about. Or do you see any developments there? I think I want more people to join our industry. That's the purpose of my podcast, because I think this is so interesting. But do you see any young people? Are they approaching you?
They are, and let me have my hull coatings engineering lens on again to give that perspective. So I sign up to the same problem that you described. There's been sort of a very solid channel of where you recruit from, be it from the sea. From our side, it was a lot of technical people who were applying coatings and doing a very important job in the docking, because that's where it happens. And then they got to know the products, they became salespersons, and that's typically how our recruitment chain looked like. And that leads to a bias of who we bring into the industry and what we do. And from a historical perspective, we also tended to interact with the shipping industry and the customers at new building stage, of course, where a lot of ships are painted. And then the first dry docking 5 years later, we interacted again. And now let's look at what you need for this ship for the next 5 years. But you talked about digitalization there, and that's something we are super excited about, and I'm super excited about, because there's so much data in the shipping industry as well. And just to give you an example, we are having positioning data of the world using AIS, as many other companies do. So we know where ships are positioned at any given time, but we're also combining this with oceanographic data. So we try to understand, again, playing hide and seek with the organism in the water. What kind of organisms are in the water right now when a ship is sitting idle outside of Santos, as an example? What kind of pressure of algae and slime is there around the ship? And here we need completely different new capabilities, because we believe we can develop algorithms that predicts risk of ships. You can think about weather routing, but it's more water routing, what happens around the ship here and now. So we also see the need for different kind of talents to help solving the same problems that we before solved with chemistry and coatings. We are now trying to be much more interactive with the ships while in operation, because it's there and then they are exposed to risk. So to look back to your question, the shipping industry, there's so much data there that can be insightful and make us more intelligent. And I just used the example of, again, the coatings lens, the antifouling high performance lens. And we see that we can attract new kinds of talents that help to solve these problems, because we describe it how it also impacts sustainability and decarbonization. I hope, Lena, that made sense, a bit of an engineer's lens to the question.
It makes sense to me, but I want to know, who do you speak to outside the maritime industry about your job or your company?
I do. Yeah, it's a good question. Do we speak enough about what we're doing, or are we speaking inside our own environment? What we do, Lena, which is important for us, is to speak with academia, not only to attract talent, but also have them helping us solve the problems, because there is a lot of good research that is ongoing that helps us. So we have expanded where before we tended to talk to chemical departments. Now we need to talk to biological departments, engineering, IT, digital. So we are trying to make ourselves more visible to the talents that can help us with the more diverse backgrounds that we need. Digital solutions or solving biological problems. So that's where we are active. But it's a good question. I'm not sure that we are active enough in the right venues to attract all the right talents.
So what about your 4 children? I don't know how old they are, but do you speak to them? I mean, I'm thinking that maybe we need to go sort of to younger people. Because when I was young, I'm very old, but when I was young, all the guys, at least at that time, now I think also girls wanted to become, someone driving a train or a sea captain or like that. So role models for the young ones. Maybe we need to talk to them. That is my view anyhow. And you being in Denmark, I remember when Maersk had a yard in Denmark, they took all the preschool classes there. And I think it has an impact.
I agree. And as I said, before, more kids, I also alluded to, I had lived in Hamburg for a period. And there, the Elbe River is going straight to the city. And there were many weekends we spent on the beach there. And a very excited dad pointed out, here's a big container ship, kids, have a look, and I'm explaining what it does. And here's a car carrier, and you see this big wall of ship coming along, and it's truly fascinating. So I'm hoping, I do believe my passion is spilling over to my kids, because the shipping industry is this, from a kid's perspective, it's very interesting. It's spectacular assets in a way. And I do believe that we can do a lot by speaking to even younger generation as well. But I do it for my kids, and I think they start to share similar passion. But I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, but that is also my experience. I've been talking to more than 220 people, and maybe 2 or 3 did what you did, saw an ad, and then replied to that. The rest of them were like me, on the banana leaf, just by accident coming into the industry, or have their parents or family in the industry which draw them into this. I think we need to change that. I think we need to be better at telling what we are doing. So which is sort of branding, and then tell it to the young people so that they can just get a little bit of interest. And once we get a little bit of interest, then they are sold. I think.
I agree. I think you do a good job as well, Lena, to help spread that message. So.
Thank you very much. I'm trying my best, and I think I was attending the European Shipping Summit in Brussels last week, and everyone was talking about that we are not very good at branding our industry. So that is what we need to do. All of a sudden, everyone agrees with me.
Yes, we now have that positive wave coming our way, so that's good. There's one thing I like to say, and that is that it's we really encourage innovation in this space, and that the fact that we have new startups inside the marine coatings area, it's very, very positive, and that's something we really want to encourage, because we talk about shipping being a bit niche and unknown. Then we talk marine coatings, it's even more unknown, and there's not many startups coming up there. So I really want to praise high-tech for taking the opportunity to be a startup in this space.
Did you have a role model growing up yourself? Maybe your father then, since he was in the painting industry, I don't know.
He is. I would definitely call him a role model, but maybe from a different perspective. So my father is a practical man and a very good painter. So I grew up in an environment where academia and education was very high on the agenda. I was very close to just joining in and painting houses myself. I really enjoyed that. It's a very mindful kind of job as well. It's very concrete. You get a job done and you see the results afterwards. In all kind of businesses that we're in today, it's a bit more diffuse and high tempo in a way. So my father is a role model for me in the sense of also appreciating what is the slower tempo kind of life and enjoying nature and all of these kind of things. I think that played in my role as a leader as well, trying to make sure that we also have a sustainable way of working, sustainable way of living, being a father of four, being able to prioritize family and time with them. So he was a role model from another perspective then, rather than bringing me into shipping. But indirectly, he did through the painting perspective.
Who do you think I should interview the next, Alexander? Who would you be interested in listening to?
I think, as I alluded to earlier also, the complexity of the industry is it's fascinating me, the different stakeholders that are involved. I really want to hear more from the chartering operation side as well of shipping, because I think they have a very big impact on this industry when it comes to decarbonization also. Again, from a technology provider's lens, we interact a lot with technical managers and owners and so on. But hearing more from chartering side of the industry, those that might not own ships but operate ships, and their perspective on how we can decarbonize would be very interesting also.
They're all busy with the fuel at the moment.
They are, but there again, as I said, there's a low-hanging fruit in the efficiency improvements of the existing world as well, and they are operating that today.
I will try to get some of those people online as well. So yeah, thank you, Alexander, for taking the time to speak to me. I think this was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you, Lena. We are excited as all of the other speakers about the maritime industry, and we see it from a different lens here. And I hope you can get the audience to also understand what we are doing and how we help this industry.
Every conversation matters.
Thank you, Alexander. I learned a lot, and I love that you're a chemical engineer, since I don't think that I have had any guest on the podcast before with that background. I had an epiphany last week when I attended a conference in another industry, the life science industry. I was in the audience and I listened to the keynote speaker who said, "We are not known to the public, and we need to work on the branding of our industry." I almost fell off my chair. And then he continued to say that they need to reach the next generation, as there is a shortage of people in their industry. Does this sound familiar to you? Then there was a futurist, of course, talking about trends, primarily digital trends. And he also gave figures on the shortage of people in that industry. I noticed that all the speakers were men, and that the only woman on stage, she had a startup and represented the younger generation. She was calling for a new mindset around leadership and collaboration. Well, I sat there and I thought, there is nothing new under the sun. Maybe we are not as unique in the maritime industry as we believe. And then I started to question this podcast. Is it really making any change? Does it help? Do I fulfill my aim to do this podcast? Well, I am considering surveying you to know what you think and where you are in the world. For podcasting, there are no good analytics. It's almost impossible to get data. So if you can help me here, that would be great. I will let you know where to find the survey once it's up, and I will remind you, since you probably doesn't love replying to surveys, but do it for me and for a better shipping podcast. That's all for now. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.